My name is Roosevelt Johnson, and at 72, I thought I had seen it all. After 40 years of building my construction business from nothing, I believed I knew what mattered: family, honesty, and the value of a hard-earned dollar. But when my daughter-in-law stormed into my living room screaming about credit card passwords, I had no idea my entire world was about to be rocked to its foundation. The truth would cost me more than money ever could. Before I get into this story, tell me where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had family drama over money. I built Johnson Construction with nothing but a second-hand pickup truck, a toolbox my father left me, and a work ethic that kept me going through 14-hour days. Back in 1971, I was just 20 years old with big dreams and calloused hands. By the time I hit 40, we were handling commercial projects across 3 states. Nothing came easy, but that was the point. I earned every victory and learned from every setback. The company motto became my personal philosophy too: built right, built to last. I never cut corners, whether on a foundation pour or my tax returns. My reputation for honesty brought in more business than any advertisement ever could. When clients hired Johnson Construction, they knew they'd get quality work at a fair price, no surprises. Martha was by my side for 46 beautiful years. She kept the books in those early days, answered calls from our kitchen phone, and somehow managed to put dinner on the table even when I came home covered in concrete dust at 9 at night. She was the smartest investment decision I ever made, as I like to tell her on our anniversaries. We weren't perfect, but we were perfect together. When cancer took her 3 years ago, it felt like someone had torn out half of my blueprint. I was still standing, but incomplete. William was our only child, born after 7 years of trying. Martha and I poured everything into that boy. He was smart as a whip and grew up around construction sites, learning to read blueprints before comic books. I never pushed him into the family business, but I couldn't hide my pride when he majored in architecture and then asked to join Johnson Construction after graduation. He had his mother's creativity and my attention to detail, the perfect combination. When William introduced us to Amanda 6 years ago, Martha and I were thrilled. She was beautiful, charming, and seemed genuinely interested in our family stories. She worked in marketing for a luxury retail company and had a polished way about her that impressed us. At their wedding 4 years ago, I welcomed her to our family with open arms. Martha was already sick then, but she rallied for the ceremony, determined to see our son married. In her final months, Martha made me promise to look after them both. We helped the newlyweds with a down payment on a beautiful home in Oak Brook, one of Chicago's nicest suburbs. It was just 15 minutes from my place, in a neighborhood with good schools for the grandchildren I hoped would come along. William joined me as Vice President of Operations at Johnson Construction, and everything seemed to be falling into place perfectly. After Martha passed, I added Amanda to one of my credit card accounts. Just for emergencies, I told them, though I secretly hoped it would help with occasional splurges that might bring some joy while they were both grieving Martha's loss too. The card had a generous limit, and I didn't think much of it when the monthly statement showed restaurant charges or department store purchases. They were young, building their life together, and I wanted to help. Looking back, I should have noticed when those occasional charges became weekly, then almost daily. Amanda would show up in designer clothes to our casual Sunday dinners. William mentioned weekend trips I hadn't heard about before, but they always thanked me sincerely, and William was working harder than ever at the company. I told myself it was just a phase, that they were finding their footing as a couple. My retirement routine was comfortable. I still went into the office 3 days a week, mostly to mentor the younger project managers and keep an eye on our legacy clients. I played golf with my buddies on Thursdays, volunteered at the Veterans Center on Fridays, and spent weekends puttering around my workshop or having dinner with William and Amanda. My financial advisor, Thomas, had been my friend since college, and he'd helped me build a secure retirement through smart investments and consistent saving. "Roosevelt, you're being too generous," Thomas warned me during our quarterly review last year. "I know you want to help William and Amanda, but there's a difference between support and enabling." I brushed him off then. Martha had always said I could be stubborn when it came to family, and she was right. I was about to learn just how right she was, in the most painful way possible. The first real sign came during the holidays, about 2 years after Martha passed. Amanda announced she'd booked a New Year's trip to Aspen, casually mentioning they'd used the emergency card for the ski resort deposit. William looked uncomfortable but stayed silent. $5,000 for a week in the mountains didn't sound like an emergency to me, but I swallowed my objection. Martha would have wanted them to enjoy themselves, I reasoned. When they returned, Amanda's social media was filled with photos of their luxury suite, private ski lessons, and champagne dinners. The total had climbed to nearly $12,000. When the statement arrived, I felt that familiar tightness in my chest that my cardiologist had warned me about. Still, I said nothing. William had just landed a major client for us, and I didn't want to dampen his success. Over the next few months, I noticed a change in how Amanda interacted with me. The warm hugs became quick pecks on the cheek. Our conversations, once flowing and genuine, became superficial. She'd check her watch repeatedly during Sunday dinners, always having somewhere more important to be. What hurt most was how she began to refer to me as William's father rather than dad, which she'd called me since their engagement. My son seemed oblivious to these changes. William had always been optimistic to a fault, seeing the best in everyone, just like his mother. When Amanda would make a subtle dig about the old-fashioned way I ran the business or my outdated views on spending, William would chuckle uncomfortably, but never challenge her. I began to see him transform from the confident young man I'd raised into someone who constantly sought his wife's approval. The credit card statements grew thicker each month. $400 at a spa, $800 at a designer boutique, $300 for dinner at places I couldn't even pronounce. Each time I opened the envelope, my blood pressure ticked up a notch. I started setting the statements aside for a few days before reviewing them, just to prepare myself. For my 70th birthday, William had planned a small celebration at my favorite steakhouse. The day before, Amanda called to say they'd need to upgrade the party and had reserved a private room at an exclusive downtown restaurant instead, putting the deposit on my card. "We want to do something special for you," she insisted, though I'd repeatedly told William I wanted something low-key with just family and a few close friends. The party turned out to be an extravagant affair with people I barely knew. Expensive champagne flowing freely, and a 5-tier cake that could have fed 50 people though only 20 guests attended. I smiled through it all for William's sake. But when Amanda announced she'd hired a famous jazz quartet for the after-party at their house, I nearly choked on my bourbon. The final bill came to over $9,000, all on my emergency card. The next day, I called Thomas to meet me for coffee. We'd been friends for over 50 years, and he was one of the few people who would give it to me straight. "You've created a monster, Roosevelt," he said after I showed him the recent statements. "This isn't about emergencies anymore. This is lifestyle funding." "I don't want to come between William and his wife," I confessed. "Martha would have wanted me to help them." Thomas shook his head. "Martha would have wanted you to protect William, even from himself sometimes. You're not doing him any favors by financing this lifestyle they can't actually afford." He was right, of course. We spent 2 hours discussing how I could establish better boundaries without causing a family rift. Thomas suggested I have a frank discussion with William alone first, then perhaps set up a proper budget for the card with clear guidelines on what constituted an emergency. That conversation never happened. The following Sunday dinner became the turning point. Amanda arrived wearing a necklace I recognized immediately as a piece from Cartier's latest collection. I'd seen it in an advertisement, priced at $23,000. My heart nearly stopped. "Beautiful necklace," I commented casually as we sat down to eat. Amanda touched it proudly. "William has excellent taste." My son looked confused for a split second, then quickly composed himself. "Only the best for my wife," he said. But I caught the flash of surprise in his eyes. He hadn't bought that necklace. Throughout dinner, I watched their interaction closely. William seemed tense, checking his phone repeatedly. Amanda dominated the conversation, talking about a luxury cruise she was planning for them in the Mediterranean. 6 countries in 2 weeks, she gushed. "We'll use the emergency card for the deposit, but we'll pay you back, Dad." They had never paid me back for anything. Not once. When Amanda excused herself to take a phone call, I leaned toward my son. "William, is everything okay with your finances?" I asked quietly. His face hardened instantly. "We're fine. Amanda deserves nice things." "I agree, son, but that necklace cost more than your first car. And this cruise sounds expensive. I'm just concerned." William cut me off. "We're adults, Dad. We don't need you monitoring our spending." Amanda returned before I could respond, and the subject was dropped. But as they were leaving, I noticed William's worried expression as Amanda chatted about redecorating their master bathroom. Something wasn't adding up. The next morning, I received a call from my private banker. "Patricia, Mr. Johnson, I wanted to alert you to some unusual activity on your accounts. There have been several large wire transfers to jewelry stores and boutiques in the past month, totaling just over $40,000. My stomach dropped. I hadn't authorized any wire transfers. There's also an attempt to access your investment portfolio," Patricia continued. "Someone tried to initiate a transfer of $200,000 yesterday, but it was flagged because the signature didn't match our records. That was the moment I knew I had to act. This wasn't about luxury trips anymore. Someone had crossed the line into fraud, and I had a sickening feeling I knew who it was. When I hung up with Patricia, I immediately changed all my passwords, including the one for the credit card account. Then I called Thomas to help me place temporary freezes on my major accounts while we investigated. 2 days later, I discovered a charge for $58,000 at a luxury watch dealer on Fifth Avenue. The transaction had been processed just before I changed the passwords. According to the sales receipt Patricia obtained for me, the purchase was a limited edition Swiss timepiece. The receipt was signed Amanda Johnson. After discovering the unauthorized watch purchase, I knew I needed to have a serious conversation with William. This had gone far beyond mere overspending. It was approaching criminal territory. I decided to invite him for lunch at the construction office, away from Amanda's influence. I rehearsed what I would say, trying to find the right balance between concern and accusation. I didn't want to alienate my only son, but this situation had become dangerous. I never got the chance for that calm discussion. The morning I planned to call William, my phone rang. It was Patricia again, her voice tense. "Mr. Johnson, there have been multiple attempts to access your accounts overnight. Someone tried your password over 20 times on various platforms. They also called our customer service line claiming to be you, requesting a password reset, but couldn't provide the security answers." I thanked Patricia for her vigilance and assured her I would handle the situation. Inside, I was seething. The boundaries had not just been crossed, they'd been obliterated. I spent the morning with Thomas, methodically securing every financial account I owned and removing Amanda's authorization from the credit card. At 2:30 that afternoon, I was in my home office reviewing project proposals when the front door burst open with such force that the handle punched a hole in the drywall. Amanda stormed into my living room, her face contorted with rage, still wearing her coat and clutching her designer handbag like a weapon. "Darling, your mom changed the password. I can't use her card anymore," she screamed, seemingly into her phone. I realized she was on a call with William. Her voice echoed through my usually peaceful home. "The transaction was declined. I'm at the store right now, and everyone is staring at me." She paced back and forth on my hardwood floors, her high heels leaving small dents with each furious step. "I don't care what he says. It's our money too. We deserve it after everything we've done." I stood from my desk and walked calmly into the living room. "Amanda, we need to talk," I said firmly. She whirled to face me, her eyes wild. "How dare you embarrass me like this? That handbag was limited edition. Now someone else will buy it." "Amanda, that card was for emergencies only. A designer handbag is not an emergency." She laughed bitterly. "Of course you wouldn't understand. You and your outdated ideas about money. William and I have a position to maintain in society. We can't be seen in last season's clothes or driving average cars. Those are wants, not needs," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "And certainly not emergencies that justify spending thousands of dollars of my money without discussion." Amanda's face twisted into an ugly sneer. "Your money? Everything you have will be William's someday anyway. We're just accessing our inheritance a little early." The callous entitlement in her voice left me speechless. This woman was talking about my death and her claims to my life's work as if discussing a weather forecast. Before I could respond, the front door flew open again. William stormed in, his face flushed red with anger. "Dad, what the hell is going on?" he demanded. "Why would you cut Amanda off without even talking to me first?" I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "William, there have been unauthorized charges and attempts to access my accounts. I needed to protect myself while we sorted this out." "Unauthorized?" Amanda scoffed. "You gave me the card. You said we could use it. For emergencies," I clarified. "Not for watches worth more than some people's homes or handbags that cost more than a car." William stepped between us, facing me. "You've always been like this, Dad. Controlling everything with your money. Holding it over our heads." His words cut deep. I had never used money to control him. If anything, I'd been too generous, too willing to give without question. "Son, someone tried to transfer $200,000 from my investment accounts without my knowledge. Someone tried to reset my banking passwords multiple times last night. This isn't about a few shopping trips anymore." Instead of looking concerned, William looked angrier. "So you're accusing Amanda of being a thief now? Is that it? Your own daughter-in-law?" Amanda moved beside him, linking her arm with his possessively. "He's always resented me, William. He never thought I was good enough for you. And now he's trying to come between us with these ridiculous accusations." "I have evidence," I said quietly. But William wasn't listening. "We don't need your money, Dad. We don't need your approval either. Come on, Amanda. We're leaving." As they turned to go, Amanda shot me a look of pure contempt. "Don't expect to see your son again until you apologize and restore my access to what's rightfully ours." The door slammed behind them with such force that a framed photo fell from the wall and shattered. Ironically, it was a picture from their wedding day, with Martha and me standing proudly beside the happy couple. I picked up the broken frame, carefully removed the photo, and sat heavily in my armchair. For hours I sat there in silence, replaying the confrontation and every interaction with Amanda over the years. Had I really been controlling with money? Had I somehow created this situation? As night fell, I realized I hadn't eaten since breakfast, but I had no appetite. The house felt emptier than it had even after Martha died. I tried calling William twice, but the calls went straight to voicemail. I left a message asking him to meet me so we could talk calmly, father to son. No response came. That night, I barely slept. My mind raced with questions and doubts. Was I overreacting? Should I just give Amanda what she wanted to keep peace in the family? Around 4 in the morning, I finally drifted off, only to be awakened by my phone at 7. It was Patricia again. "Mr. Johnson, I'm sorry to bother you so early, but there's been more activity I think you should know about. Someone accessed your email account overnight and used it to request wire transfer forms from the bank. They also emailed your accountant requesting copies of your trust documents and will." That was the moment I knew this wasn't just about shopping or entitlement. This was calculated. This was theft. And it was time to find out exactly what I was dealing with. After speaking with Patricia, I made a difficult decision. I called Jack Harrington, a former police detective who now ran a private investigation firm. Jack and I had worked together years ago when we had a series of equipment thefts at construction sites. He was thorough, discreet, and unflinching. Exactly what I needed now. "This won't be pleasant, Roosevelt," Jack warned when I explained the situation in his sparse downtown office later that day. "Family investigations never are. Are you sure you want to proceed?" "I need to know what I'm dealing with," I replied, "for William's sake as much as my own." Jack nodded grimly. "We'll start with financial records and work outward. I'll need authorization to access certain information." For the next week, I went through the motions of daily life like a sleepwalker. I showed up at the office, reviewed projects, met with clients, but my mind was elsewhere. William hadn't returned my calls or emails. The silence from my only child was deafening. 10 days after our blow-up, Jack called me to his office. The conference table was covered with folders, printouts, and photographs. My heart sank as I took a seat. "It's worse than you thought," Jack said without preamble. sliding a folder toward me. Amanda has a shopping addiction. Severe one. She's been hiding purchases from William for years, storing them in a separate apartment she rents under her maiden name. He showed me photos of a small apartment filled with shopping bags, designer clothes with tags still attached, jewelry boxes, and shoes lined up in perfect rows. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of unworn items. She's also been selling some of your gifts online, Jack continued, pulling up screenshots of luxury resale websites. That watch you gave William for his 30th birthday? She sold it 2 years ago for $16,000. The pearl necklace that belonged to your late wife, which you gave to Amanda as a wedding gift, sold for $22,000 last year. Each revelation felt like a physical blow. The family heirlooms I'd entrusted to them, thinking they were cherished, had been converted to cash to feed Amanda's addiction. There's more, Jack said grimly. Amanda has opened 8 credit cards in William's name without his knowledge. The combined debt is just over $170,000. Most are nearly maxed out. How could William not know this? I asked, struggling to comprehend the scale of deception. She intercepts the mail, has the statement sent to a P.O. box, makes minimum payments to keep everything afloat. It's a common pattern with financial infidelity. Jack then revealed the most disturbing discovery. Amanda had been married before, a fact she'd never disclosed to our family. Her previous marriage had ended after just 2 years when she ran up massive debt in her ex-husband's name, nearly bankrupting him. She's been meeting with divorce attorneys too, Jack said, showing me surveillance photos of Amanda entering a law office known for representing wives in high-asset divorces. Based on our sources, she's been discussing how to maximize her share of both your estate and the family business in a divorce settlement. I felt physically ill. She's planning to leave William, after destroying his credit and stealing from him? Not exactly, Jack said, his expression grim. Based on what we've gathered, she's planning to establish that William is entitled to half of Johnson Construction as your son and heir. Then, as his wife, she'd be entitled to half of his share in the divorce. She's playing a long game. Roosevelt. The final piece of evidence was a recording from Amanda's most recent meeting with the divorce attorney, legally obtained as it took place in a restaurant, a public setting with no expectation of privacy. William's father is old school. Amanda's voice came through clearly on the recording. He still thinks the business will stay in the family forever. But once I file for divorce, I'll own 25% of a company worth millions. William is clueless. He signs whatever I put in front of him. Last week, I had him sign power of attorney documents without even reading them. I sat in stunned silence after the recording ended. This wasn't just about unauthorized credit card charges anymore. This was a calculated plan to take not just my money, but my life's work. The business I'd built from nothing. What about William? I finally asked. Is he involved in any of this? Jack shook his head. All evidence suggests he's completely in the dark. She's manipulated him masterfully, isolating him from you, from old friends, from financial reality. Classic case of emotional and financial abuse, just with the gender roles reversed from what we typically see. I spent hours reviewing everything Jack had uncovered. The scope of Amanda's deception was breathtaking. She'd created an elaborate web of lies, hidden accounts, and secret plans. And at the center of it all was my son, the unknowing victim being set up for financial and emotional devastation. What do I do now, Jack? I asked, feeling the weight of this knowledge crushing me. That depends on what your goal is, he replied. If you want to protect your assets, that's one approach. If you want to save your son from what's coming, that's another. The question is, can you do both? I didn't hesitate. William comes first. Always has, Jack nodded. Then you need to show him the truth, as painful as it will be. But you need to be prepared for him not to believe you, at least not at first. People like Amanda are experts at manipulation. She's had years to poison him against you. That night, I met with Thomas to review all my financial and estate documents. We implemented immediate protections for the business and my personal assets. Then we began compiling everything into a format that would be undeniable, even to someone who didn't want to believe it. The hardest part was knowing the pain this would cause William. Martha and I had always tried to protect him from life's harshest realities. Now, I had to be the one to shatter his world. But letting Amanda continue her plan would ultimately hurt him far more. As I drove home that evening, I thought about what Martha would do in this situation. She'd been the compass of our family, always knowing the right path even when it wasn't the easiest one. The truth always comes out eventually, she used to say. Better to face it on your own terms than have it surprise you. I resolved to follow her wisdom one more time. For William's sake, and for the legacy we had built together, I would bring this painful truth to light. After 2 weeks of silence, William finally agreed to meet me for lunch. I suggested the small Italian restaurant where we used to go for his birthday dinners as a child, hoping the familiar setting might soften what was to come. I arrived 30 minutes early, bringing a leather portfolio containing key documents Jack had compiled. My hands trembled slightly as I reviewed them one last time. William arrived precisely at noon, his face guarded. He'd lost weight, and dark circles underlined his eyes. My heart ached seeing him so worn down. He sat across from me without removing his coat, a clear sign he wasn't planning to stay long. "I only came because you said it was important," he began, his voice flat. "Amanda thinks I shouldn't have come at all." "Thank you for coming anyway," I said gently. I wouldn't have asked if it wasn't crucial. We ordered drinks, and an uncomfortable silence fell. I'd rehearsed this conversation dozens of times, but now that the moment had arrived, words failed me. "William, what I'm about to show you is going to be difficult to process," I finally said. "All I ask is that you look at everything before you react." His expression hardened. "If this is more accusations against Amanda—" "This isn't about accusations," I interrupted, keeping my voice calm. "This is about documented facts. Please, son, just look." Reluctantly, he took the portfolio. I watched his face as he reviewed the credit reports in his name, showing cards he'd never applied for. His expression shifted from irritation to confusion to shock as he turned each page. "These cards aren't mine," he said, but doubt had crept into his voice. "I never applied for these." "Keep going," I encouraged softly. He continued through bank statements, showing transfers from our joint business account to unknown recipients, sales receipts for family heirlooms he thought were safely stored in their home, and finally, surveillance photos of Amanda entering and exiting her secret apartment, arms laden with shopping bags. "This can't be right," he whispered, but I could see the dawning recognition in his eyes. "There has to be some explanation." I slid an external drive across the table. This contains recordings of Amanda's meetings with divorce attorneys, discussing how to claim part of Johnson Construction in a settlement. It also has footage of her storing items in the apartment and selling your belongings online. William stared at the drive as if it might bite him. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, to my surprise, tears began sliding down his cheeks. "Dad, I don't know what to say," he finally managed. "How long have you known?" "I only confirmed it recently," I answered. "But I suspected something was wrong for some time. I should have said something sooner. I'm sorry, son." William shook his head, angrily wiping away tears. "No, I'm the one who should be sorry. The things I said to you, when all along, you were trying to protect me." The moment felt fragile, like a bridge being rebuilt one plank at a time over a dangerous chasm. "What happens now is up to you," I told him. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you." William straightened his shoulders, a glimpse of the confident young man I remembered emerging through his pain. "I need to see this apartment for myself. I need to know if this is all real." Jack had provided keys to the apartment, obtained legally through the property management company, after showing evidence of financial fraud. That afternoon, William and I stood before a nondescript door on the 18th floor of a luxury high-rise downtown. When William unlocked the door, the air rushed out of his lungs as if he'd been punched. The apartment was exactly as Jack's photos had shown, a shrine to conspicuous consumption. Clothing racks lined the walls, laden with designer garments. Glass cases displayed handbags worth more than most people's monthly salary. Stacks of shoeboxes reached nearly to the ceiling. "My God," William whispered, moving through the space like a man in a trance. This must be hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stuff. In the bedroom closet, he found items he recognized, watches he thought he'd misplaced, the custom cufflinks I'd given him when he joined the company, even the wedding band that had belonged to his grandfather, which he'd tearfully reported as lost during a business trip last year. She told me it must have fallen off at the hotel, he said, slipping the ring onto his finger. She helped me search for hours. She pretended to call the hotel later to see if housekeeping had found it. The final confirmation came when William opened a desk drawer and found a stack of credit card statements in his name, along with a notebook detailing which minimum payments were due each month. Beside it lay a folder containing power of attorney documents bearing his signature. I remember signing these, he said hollowly. She told me they were updated insurance forms for the house. I didn't even read them. We spent 2 solemn hours in that apartment, cataloging its contents and gathering evidence. With each discovery, William's shock transformed into a cold, clear anger. By the time we left, he had made his decision. I want to confront her, he stated as we drove back to my house. Not to save our marriage. That's over. But I need her to know that I know the truth. Together, we formulated a plan. William would invite Amanda to dinner at my house, ostensibly to work things out between all of us. Once there, we would present the evidence together, with Jack and a lawyer present in case things escalated. That Friday evening, I prepared Martha's famous pot roast, William's childhood favorite. The familiar ritual of cooking helped steady my nerves. Jack arrived early, setting up recording equipment discreetly around the living room, a legal precaution given Amanda's pattern of manipulation and lies. When the doorbell rang at 7, William answered it. Amanda swept in wearing a new dress I recognized from her secret collection, diamonds glittering at her ears and throat. Roosevelt. She greeted me with artificial warmth. I'm so glad we're finally working this out. Family should never be divided over something as trivial as money. The irony of her statement might have been amusing under different circumstances. I simply nodded and invited her to sit down. Actually, William said, his voice remarkably steady, before dinner, we have something to discuss with you, Amanda. Her smile faltered slightly. Can't it wait until after we eat? I'm starving. No, William replied firmly. It can't wait. Jack entered from the kitchen then, followed by Thomas. Amanda's eyes darted between them, confusion turning to wariness. What's going on? Who are these people? This is Jack Harrington, a private investigator, William explained. And you already know Thomas, my father's financial advisor. Amanda's composure cracked slightly. A private investigator? What is this, some kind of intervention? In a way, I said, taking a seat across from her. Amanda, we know everything. The secret apartment, the credit cards in William's name, the meetings with divorce attorneys, the stolen heirlooms. Her face went through a remarkable series of transformations. Shock, denial, calculation, and finally, an attempt at wounded innocence. These are outrageous accusations. William, are you going to let them talk to me like this? William placed a laptop on the coffee table, opening it to show a slideshow of photos. Amanda entering her secret apartment. Amanda meeting with lawyers. Amanda selling his belongings online. It's all documented, Amanda, he said quietly. Every lie, every theft, every betrayal. Her strategy shifted instantly. Tears welled in her eyes, and her voice became small and vulnerable. William, I can explain. I have a problem. I've been trying to hide it because I was ashamed. I need help, not accusations. For a moment, I saw William waver. The desire to believe the best about someone you love is powerful. But then his expression hardened again. If you'd come to me with this, told me the truth, I would have helped you, he said. But you didn't just hide an addiction. You actively planned to destroy me financially. You stole from me, from my father. You sold family heirlooms that can never be replaced. That's not true, she protested. Those lawyers were for estate planning. I was trying to protect our future. Jack pressed a button on his phone, and Amanda's own voice filled the room. Once I file for divorce, I'll own 25% of a company worth millions. William is clueless. All pretense fell away. Amanda's face contorted with rage. She stood up, pointing an accusing finger at me. "This is your fault. You turned him against me. You could never accept that he chose me, that he loves me more than your precious company." "Amanda," William said with remarkable calm, "I've already spoken with a lawyer. I'll be filing for divorce on grounds of fraud and financial misconduct. The police have been notified about the identity theft and unauthorized use of my personal information. You'll be receiving formal notice tomorrow." "You can't do this to me," she shrieked. "I gave you the best years of my life. I made you who you are." William shook his head sadly. "No, Amanda. You nearly destroyed who I am, but you didn't quite succeed." Amanda's rage turned calculating once more. "Fine. Go ahead with your divorce. I'll still get half of everything, including his future inheritance," she said, gesturing toward me. "No judge will side with you over a wife who just made some financial mistakes." Thomas cleared his throat. "Actually, Miss Johnson, there are laws specifically addressing financial fraud in marriage, and Roosevelt has already restructured his estate planning to protect the business through a trust. Even if you manage to get half of William's current assets, which is unlikely given the evidence, you would have no claim on Johnson Construction or future inheritances." Amanda's face drained of color. Her carefully constructed plan was collapsing before her eyes. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, then turned back, her expression ugly with hatred. "This isn't over. You'll regret this. Both of you. Nobody humiliates me and gets away with it." As the door slammed behind her, William collapsed onto the sofa, emotionally drained. I sat beside him, placing my hand on his shoulder. No words seemed adequate for the moment. We sat in silence as the reality of what had just happened settled around us. "I feel so stupid," William finally said. "You're not stupid, son," I replied gently. "You trusted someone who didn't deserve that trust. That doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human." As Jack and Thomas discreetly gathered their things and left, William and I moved to the kitchen. I served 2 plates of Martha's pot roast, and we ate quietly, 2 generations of Johnson men beginning the process of rebuilding what had nearly been destroyed. The weeks following our confrontation with Amanda were among the most difficult of our lives. True to her threat, Amanda launched a campaign to turn family and friends against us. She contacted distant relatives, business associates, even our church congregation, spinning a tale of elder abuse and control, claiming I had manipulated William into abandoning her. "Your father wants to control the money, so he's turning William against me," she told my sister in Phoenix, who called me immediately. "He never thought I was good enough for his precious son." Some people believed her. Friends William had known since college began avoiding his calls. Clients asked awkward questions about family troubles affecting the business. The whispers and sidelong glances followed us everywhere in our close-knit community. William moved back into his childhood bedroom temporarily, both for emotional support and practical financial reasons. The divorce proceedings revealed the true extent of Amanda's deception. Credit card debt approaching $200,000, multiple loans taken out against their home equity, even a second mortgage William had never known about. Their beautiful house, once a symbol of their promising future, was now underwater financially. How did I not see any of this? William asked one evening as we reviewed documents his lawyer had sent over. The mortgage statements, the credit card bills. Where did she hide it all? "She had a P.O. box," I reminded him gently. "And she handled most of the household finances while you focused on the business." William shook his head. "I was so blind, so trusting." The legal process exposed even more painful truths. Amanda had been systematically selling off not just luxury items, but personal mementos as well. The briefcase Martha had given William upon his college graduation, the first edition books he'd collected, even the vintage car we had restored together during his teenage years had been sold without his knowledge. She said it was in the shop for repairs. William explained when we discovered the car's sale, then claimed it was stolen from the garage. We even filed a police report. Each new revelation deepened William's sense of betrayal. Some nights, I heard him pacing in his room until dawn, unable to find peace in sleep. During the day, he threw himself into work with a new intensity. as if the physical and mental exhaustion might numb his emotional pain. I worried about him constantly. The son who had always been quick to laugh, who saw the best in every situation, had been replaced by a man who rarely smiled and questioned everyone's motives. He lost weight, his clothes hanging loosely on his frame. The divorce was consuming him from the inside out. My own emotions were complicated. I felt guilty for not acting sooner, for not recognizing Amanda's true nature before she could inflict so much damage. I questioned every interaction we'd had, wondering if there had been signs I'd missed, warnings I'd ignored. The burden of what if weighed heavily on my shoulders. Despite my efforts to shield him, the divorce process was brutal. Amanda contested everything, demanded financial support, claimed partial ownership of Johnson Construction, and even tried to secure rights to my estate through William. Her lawyers used every delaying tactic possible, dragging out proceedings to increase costs and emotional strain. Community gossip reached a fever pitch when Amanda gave a tearful interview to a local society magazine, painting herself as the victim of a controlling family dynasty. She claimed William had become a different person under my influence, suggesting I'd staged the entire scenario to prevent her from having access to her rightful share of the Johnson fortune. I wanted to respond publicly, to defend our family name and integrity, but Thomas wisely counseled restraint. The truth doesn't need to shout, he reminded me. Let the legal process speak for itself. William and I maintained a dignified silence in public, even as Amanda's allegations became more outlandish. In private, we focused on untangling the financial web she had created. I helped William establish a debt repayment plan, insisting on lending him money properly, with documentation and reasonable terms, despite his initial resistance. This isn't charity, son, I explained. It's what family does. We help each other through hard times, but we do it the right way, with clear boundaries and expectations. Gradually, we fell into a new routine. Morning coffee together, before heading to the office. Weekly meetings with lawyers to address the latest developments. Sunday dinners, just the two of us, often cooking Martha's recipes as a way to feel her presence with us. 3 months into the divorce process, William began seeing a therapist specializing in emotional and financial abuse. The sessions were difficult but necessary. He needed to understand how he'd been manipulated over years, how Amanda had isolated him from support systems and undermined his confidence. The therapist helped him recognize the patterns so he wouldn't repeat them. She says I have people-pleaser tendencies, William told me after one session. I ignore red flags because I want so badly to believe people have good intentions. You get that from your mother, I said with a sad smile. Martha always looked for the good in everyone. It's not a character flaw, son. It's a beautiful quality. You just need to balance it with a healthy dose of caution. As spring turned to summer, the legal proceedings finally gained momentum. Jack's meticulous documentation proved invaluable. The financial fraud was irrefutable, the identity theft clearly established. Amanda's previous marriage and similar pattern of behavior became admissible evidence, showing a history of intentional deception. William found unexpected support from Amanda's ex-husband, who came forward after learning about our situation through mutual acquaintances. His testimony about Amanda's identical tactics in their marriage strengthened our case considerably. By July, Amanda's lawyers began suggesting settlement discussions. Their client's position had weakened significantly, and the possibility of criminal charges loomed if we chose to pursue them. William, despite his anger, had no desire to see Amanda imprisoned. He wanted financial resolution and closure, not vengeance. Taking her to criminal court would just keep her in our lives longer, he reasoned. I want this chapter closed as quickly and cleanly as possible. The settlement negotiations were tense but productive. Amanda relinquished all claims to Johnson Construction and my estate. William assumed responsibility for half the marital debt, though legally he could have contested it all as fraudulent. In exchange, Amanda would receive a modest one-time payment to restart her life elsewhere, contingent upon signing a non-disclosure agreement about the family and business. It's worth it to have her out of our lives completely, William decided. The money doesn't matter compared to our peace of mind. The divorce was finalized in August, 9 months after our initial confrontation. The terms required Amanda to vacate their house within 30 days and prohibited her from contacting either of us except through attorneys. William chose not to keep the house. Too many painful memories lingered there. Instead, we listed it for sale, with proceeds designated to pay down the fraudulent debt. That evening, William and I sat on my back porch, watching the sunset with 2 glasses of Martha's favorite bourbon. "I never thought I'd be a divorced 34-year-old living with his father," William said ruefully. "I never thought I'd be a 72-year-old helping his son recover from financial fraud," I countered. "Life takes unexpected turns." William was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Do you think Mom would be disappointed in me?" The question broke my heart. "William, your mother would be incredibly proud of your strength and dignity through all of this. The only thing that ever disappointed Martha was dishonesty. You faced this terrible situation with honesty and integrity. She would admire that more than you know." He nodded slowly, blinking back tears. "Thanks, Dad, for everything, for not saying I told you so, for helping me clean up this mess." "That's what family does," I replied simply. "Real family, anyway." As summer turned to fall, we began to see small signs of healing. William started joining his old basketball league again on Thursday nights. I resumed my Veterans Center volunteering. We focused on rebuilding the business connections that had been strained during the divorce, hosting a client appreciation event that was remarkably successful. 6 months after the divorce, William found a small but charming house, just a few blocks from mine. Though I'd grown accustomed to having him home again, I knew it was an important step in his recovery, reclaiming his independence and building a new life. The day he moved in, I presented him with a housewarming gift, a framed photo of William as a child with Martha and me on a fishing trip, all of us laughing as he proudly displayed a tiny sunfish. It was a reminder of simpler times, of family bonds that could weather any storm. "We're going to be okay, aren't we, Dad?" he asked, as we stood in his new, mostly empty living room. "We already are," I assured him. And for the first time in over a year, I truly believed it. 1 year after Amanda's departure from our lives, the changes in William were remarkable. The haunted look had left his eyes, replaced by a cautious optimism. He'd begun dating again. A kindergarten teacher named Diana, who had none of Amanda's flashy exterior but possessed genuine warmth that reminded me a little of Martha. "We're taking it extremely slow," William told me over our weekly Sunday dinner. "No joint accounts, no major financial decisions. She understands why, and she respects the boundaries." Diana had been divorced herself after a brief marriage in her 20s, giving her empathy for William's situation without the baggage of Amanda's manipulations. When he introduced us, she asked thoughtful questions about the construction business and brought homemade apple pie, using Martha's recipe that William had shared with her. I liked her immediately. The business had fully recovered from the temporary disruption. In fact, Johnson Construction was thriving, having landed 2 major commercial projects that would keep us busy for the next 3 years. William had stepped fully into his role as vice president, bringing innovative ideas while respecting the foundation I'd built. My approach to financial discussions within the family had evolved significantly. What once seemed like private matters now became open conversations. I invited William to quarterly meetings with Thomas, ensuring complete transparency about the company's finances and my personal estate planning. "I want you to understand every aspect of this business and my financial decisions," I explained. "No surprises, no mysteries. Knowledge is protection." William appreciated this new openness. "I wish we'd had these kinds of talks years ago," he admitted during one such meeting. "Maybe I would have recognized the financial red flags with Amanda earlier." Perhaps the most healing activity was the weekend woodworking projects we started in my garage workshop. Martha had always encouraged my hobby, saying it kept my hands busy and my mind calm. William had shown little interest in it during his younger years, but now he found the same peace in creating something tangible that I had always experienced. We began with simple projects: a bookshelf for his new house, a coffee table for his living room. As his skills improved, we tackled more ambitious work. For Diana's birthday, we crafted a jewelry box with intricate inlay work that took 6 weekends to complete. The pride in William's eyes when she tearfully thanked him made every splinter worthwhile. The woodshop became our sanctuary, a place where conversation flowed naturally between the sounds of sanders and saws. Sometimes we discussed business matters, sometimes memories of Martha, sometimes William's ongoing therapy insights. Often, we worked in comfortable silence, two generations of men finding healing in productive work. At the office, William took on increasing responsibility. I found myself stepping back, attending meetings only 3 days a week. Then, too, my son had developed a natural leadership style that combined my attention to detail with his own innovative vision. Employees respected him, clients trusted him, and I felt a profound pride watching him come into his own professionally. That spring, motivated by our experience, I decided to start a financial literacy program through the local community center. Once a month, I led workshops for young adults on topics ranging from basic budgeting to recognizing financial abuse. William occasionally joined me as a guest speaker, sharing his experience without shame, hoping others might recognize warning signs he had missed. If just one person avoids what I went through, it's worth being vulnerable, he explained after a particularly emotional session where he detailed Amanda's manipulation tactics. The program quickly gained popularity, with attendance growing from 12 people at the first workshop to over 50 by the fourth month. Local banks offered support, providing materials and even scholarship funds for participants pursuing further education. What had begun as a small effort to find meaning in our painful experience had blossomed into a valuable community resource. Our first holiday season without Amanda brought unexpected peace. Instead of elaborate, showy celebrations, William and I hosted a simple Christmas dinner for a few close friends and relatives. Diana came, bringing her elderly mother, who delighted everyone with stories of her days as a jazz singer in Chicago's golden age. Thomas and his wife brought their grandchildren, who filled the house with laughter. The modest gathering felt more authentically festive than any of Amanda's extravagant parties ever had. As we cleared dishes together afterward, William paused, dish rag in hand. "I was dreading the holidays," he confessed. "I thought they would just highlight everything that went wrong this year. But instead, I feel grateful." "For what?" I asked, genuinely curious. "For the truth," he said simply. "As painful as it was, the truth set us free. We could be dealing with Amanda's deceptions for years, decades even, if we hadn't discovered it when we did." His insight struck me as profoundly wise. In exposing Amanda's lies, we had indeed found a freedom that transcended the financial implications. We had reclaimed our authenticity, our family bond, our ability to trust our own perceptions. As winter melted into spring, I found myself reflecting often on what constitutes true wealth. The construction company had made me financially comfortable beyond what I could have imagined as a young man with a second-hand pickup and borrowed tools. But the real treasure was the relationship I'd rebuilt with my son, the legacy of honesty and resilience we now shared. One Saturday morning, William and I were having coffee at a downtown cafe when Amanda walked in. It was the first time we'd seen her since the divorce. She was with a well-dressed older man who wore the distracted expression I'd come to recognize in William during their marriage. Amanda had found a new target. For a moment, our eyes met across the room. She flushed with anger or embarrassment. I couldn't tell which. Then she turned deliberately away, guiding her companion to a table far from ours. "Are you okay?" I asked William quietly. He considered the question seriously, watching his ex-wife's animated gestures as she charmed her new conquest. "You know what's strange? I feel sorry for him, but I'm completely okay. She has no power over me anymore." We finished our coffee in comfortable silence, paid our bill, and left without further acknowledgement of Amanda's presence. Outside, the spring sunshine warmed our faces as we walked toward the car. "I wonder if I'll ever fully trust someone again," William mused as we drove home. "You will," I assured him, "but it will be different than before. Trust isn't about blind faith, son. Real trust includes verification. It requires transparency. Martha used to say that love without honesty is just infatuation." William smiled at the mention of his mother's wisdom. She was right about so many things. In the workshop that afternoon, as we finished a rocking chair for Diana's front porch, William suddenly put down his sandpaper and looked at me intently. "Dad, I need to thank you for something." "What's that?" I asked, pausing my work. "Thank you for being willing to lose me temporarily, to save me permanently," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "When you confronted Amanda, showed me the evidence, you risked our relationship. I could have chosen not to believe you. I could have cut you out of my life completely." I nodded slowly, acknowledging the truth in his words. "It was the hardest decision I've ever made," I admitted. "But sometimes, real love means making difficult choices, even when they might cost you everything." As summer approached, William's relationship with Diana continued to deepen. They moved at a careful pace, both healing from past wounds, building something genuine and sustainable. He brought her to more family dinners, included her in some of our weekend projects, and spoke of future possibilities with cautious hope. Johnson Construction celebrated its 50th anniversary with a community event honoring long-term employees and clients. Standing beside William as we cut a ceremonial ribbon on our newly expanded headquarters, I felt Martha's presence strongly. She would have been so proud of the man our son had become, especially in the face of such adversity. Later that evening, as guests mingled and celebrated, William raised his glass for a toast. "To my father, Roosevelt Johnson," he said, his voice carrying across the crowded room, "who taught me that a business, like a life, must be built on a foundation of honesty, who showed me that the strongest structures can weather any storm if their core is sound, and who demonstrated that it's never too late to rebuild what matters most." The crowd applauded warmly, but I barely heard them through the emotion welling in my chest. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that despite everything we'd endured, we had emerged stronger, wiser, and more authentically connected than ever before. Sometimes, the most valuable lessons come wrapped in the most painful packages. Amanda's betrayal had cost us financially, emotionally, even physically, through the stress we'd endured. But what we gained was beyond price. A deeper understanding of true wealth, real family bonds, and the power of facing truth together, no matter how difficult. As I look back now from the perspective of my 74 years, I understand that the emergency credit card that started our ordeal wasn't just about money. It represented trust, and how even our best intentions can be manipulated when we don't balance generosity with wisdom. The password I changed didn't just protect my finances, it became the first step toward reclaiming our authentic relationship as father and son. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect someone you love, even when they might not understand it at first? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and like this video. Your support helps me continue sharing these life lessons that were earned the hard way. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the most loving thing we can do is speak difficult truths, even when silence would be easier.